that have told us that eating meat will increase your risk of certain cancers.
You serious?
You can learn more about this at lifespod.com. I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet. We have a 3-Season Diet Eating Guide, which is free. You can get it at lifespod.com. And again, check out our newsletter where I put articles with all the scientific references proving ancient modern wisdom with ancient modern wisdom, ancient wisdom, medical wisdom, Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be reacting to a video by Dr. John. I believe he's a naturopathic doctor, Ayurveda medicine, Indian medicine. He's going to be talking about the carnivore diet, the pros and cons. So we're just going to see what he has to say about it and, point out where he may get it right and where he may get it wrong. And because he's a doctor, even though naturopathic, that's totally legit. We just want to see what he has to say. Let's go. If this is resonating with you already, pause for a second and click the link below and join the Carnivore Labs community. Absolutely free, where we're all about fixing fatigue, addiction, and blood sugar without gimmicks, willpower, or calorie counting. Just science, nutrition, and a system that works. A private community of men where you don't have to explain yourself and have the freedom and support to experiment with your own struggles, like I do.
Hi everybody, Dr. John here with LifeSpa Ayurveda. Today I want to talk about the pros and the cons of the carnivore diet.
I just want to first say that I'm wearing my hat because, two of us, two bald heads, we look like a couple of kneecaps. So I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not going to have you looking at two domes like that. So I'm wearing my hat. So just want to point that out.
That is definitely gaining more and more popularity. At first blush, you might say, oh my God, all meat diet. How can that be good for you?
That's because we've been raised to think that meat is bad for us. Saturated fat is bad for us. We're supposed to eat fruit and vegetables. This is all based on conditioning from the media, from entertainment industry, through movies and music, all these type of things. So he kind of says it like that's the right way to think about it, but really we've just been conditioned to think that way. He's kind of already gaining trust because he's saying something that you can relate to. Yeah, I do think meat is bad for me. So part of sales is trying to match a person's tone, body language, find something in common that can help build trust right away. So a lot of people will say common narratives, things that are popular, things that people think, and then that kind of builds trust. So add that to the fact that he is a doctor, you already have some kind of good influence going on here.
Well, there's some interesting studies that I want to share with you.
We're going to see what these studies are. If it's human nutrition, they're just surveys. They're just basic observation, no control. In the last 7 years or so, this whole studies, evidence-based, quote unquote, has really been pushed, especially in the last 5 years. They really want people to appeal to authority, not science. It's not science. These studies are epidemiological studies. It's a kind of a pseudoscience. It's a theology and ideology. So they want us to really kind of submit to scientists, and a lot of them aren't even scientists. A lot of them are authors who put out these so-called studies, but people are just throwing this word around. Trust the science. What study, you give your opinion on something, or you say, hey, I've been doing this and I feel great. And they're like, well, what studies do you have to support that? This is just a kind of a ridiculous standard that people are putting out there to really control the narrative. So you know how I feel about studies. It's scripture for the Church of Modern Medicine, basically. Agree, disagree, you don't like it. That's the way I'm putting it. And that makes it clear. So it is definitely not science. Let's go.
That are important for you to know. The all meat, all animal product diet is not something new. For example, the Inuits in the Arctic Circle have been eating a mostly animal protein, animal fat diet for thousands of years, and they have some interesting.
So yeah, just because they've been eating for thousands of years, that's not evidence for me. It's interesting, but that's not why I do carnivore.
Studies behind them, showing that they live a long and healthy life. There was a study when some of the explorers came up to the Arctic Circle, and they actually did the Inuit diet, and they actually thrived on it for a year that they were studied. And I think the big question is the carnivore diet something that, number one, should we do?
I think the biggest question is, did those explorers continue doing carnivore? If they did, well, how did it go? If they didn't, why not? But we don't need studies to prove anything. I mean, I know they went there to observe them. They tried the diet with the Inuit. They did great on it. That's great. But really, at the end of the day, every video you see, no matter what the diet is, everyone's trying to pitch their diet and lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with that. But just some of us are better than others. And unfortunately, a lot of the others are really good at pitching this stuff, but they're actually selling you pseudoscience. People on carnivore we're shouting from the rooftops how amazing this diet is and this lifestyle is. Of course, it's not easy if you're addicted to carbohydrates, but people who are against it mostly talk against carnivore. They and they quote these so-called studies to back whatever it is they're doing. So, take that for what it's worth, but trying carnivore, transitioning properly, you're going to see great results.
And is it something that should be done for an extended period of time? And that is kind of where the rubber meets the road. I think that at the end of the day here, the carnivore diet is really a matter of dose and a matter.
So yeah, he's talking about how long you should do it. But there's quite a few people that have been doing it for decades, and for even several years. There's thousands of people have been doing this for a while, and everybody has nothing but great things to say about it, even still. Now, you do see some videos of people say why I quit carnivore. Some of those are clickbait, but even the ones that are legit, pretty much all of them didn't transition properly. They didn't do it properly. I know that sounds kind of, no real Scotsman type argument, but no, really, there is a right and wrong way to switch from any diet to another diet. You have to do it gradually. You have to know what you're doing, because our body is, extremely complex. It's a miraculous machine, so to speak. You can't just willy-nilly what you put in it. So properly transitioning is important. And to say that, you feel great now and you feel great. You've been feeling great for 3 years, for 5 years, but one day it's going to just completely turn into something else. That kind of stems to like the belief in evolution. We come from monkeys. Given enough time, a human can become a potato, or a potato become a human, this kind of stuff. That's the thinking that it's following from that type of thinking. And so I don't do that. I don't believe in that. So, he's saying given enough time, it'll go south, but we know that's not true.
Matter of duration. So let's dig into that.
And it's not about dose. I don't know why he's talking about dose.
Dig into some of the science. If you're watching this on my website at lifespod.com, please.
And the reason why I say I don't know what he's talking about dose is because maybe he's implying that you could eat too much. Maybe the Inuit don't eat as much meat as we do in the West. We have more access to meat and whatnot, and we don't really probably run around and walk a lot, which doesn't matter because you don't even need to really exercise on a carnivore diet. Everything takes care of itself. Maybe a little walking. You can do some resistance training. I'm not saying don't do that, but he may be implying you can eat too much, but you can't eat too much on a carnivore diet. It'd be extremely difficult. You'd have to force yourself, and it would taste so horrible, and you'd be so sick of it, because those are the satiety signals when you eat carnivores, that you just kind of like, I'm done. And it's not that you're bored with the diet or you're tired of eating meat. We're just not used to satiety signals being that way. We're used to our stomachs getting physically full. Like, oh, I'm stuffed, like that's how we're used to eating in the West. So when you turn to carnivore and you're like, ugh, I can't eat anymore. That's just your body saying we're good. Stop eating. And that comes pretty quick for me. In fact, one of the biggest issues with carnivore I see with myself and others is that we don't eat enough. It's so satiating, especially if you have some, like I still have some fat to lose. Maybe my body's like, okay, you're good with this amount of food. We're going to use some of the stored fuel to burn off burn off. So whatever the case is, I can't eat a lot of meat. And the eggs, I get satisfied pretty quickly.
Subscribe, check out our newsletter that you get, so you get this information every week in your inbox. And also check out our Ayurvedic store on the way out. If you're watching us on YouTube, please like, follow, and subscribe. Thanks so much, guys. All right, so let's dig into this. Also in 1797, Dr. John Rollo in St. Lucia did a study on an all animal protein diet, no vegetables, no carbohydrates, and did this with diabetes. And
he kind of said that, that could have been unintentional, but he kind of separated vegetables and carbohydrates like they're different things. Vegetables are carbohydrates, and carbohydrates are sugar.
And the results on this diet were so powerful that became, in the 1700s, the standard treatment for diabetes for many, many years, and it was very, very successful. Then insulin was discovered, and all of a sudden it was a lot easier just to take an injection, and you can go back to eating whatever you wanted again, and that's of course somewhat of the American way, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's unfortunately the American way. Same with these Ozempic and these medications for carb addiction. Yeah, if you're addicted to carbs, just take this medication, no problem. But we know how that's going. So this is, what he's saying, there was a study showed that it helped reverse type 2 diabetes, helped manage, probably, I don't know what the study said exactly, but maybe even type 1 diabetes to help regulate it better, less medication. But these are minimal observational studies, minimal control, even though it looks like something positive for the carnivore diet. I don't go down that road, because as soon as you join that circus and start quoting that scripture from these studies, you're just now kind of setting yourself up for the argument that so many anti-carnivore people bring up, which is there is no studies to support the carnivore diet, right? So there's no studies to support any diet. There are these hypothesis generating epidemiological surveys that try to say they're studies and try to, and most of these are funded by food corporations, food and drug corporations. This is a known fact. So that's the majority of the funding comes from the very companies that are, there's a conflict of interest basically. So yeah, we'll move on, see what he has to say. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
But that diet definitely showed a lot of benefit. So in 2021, there was another study that had over 2,000 people in the study, and they actually measured their metabolic health. They saw significantly lower in their hemoglobin A1C, which is a 3-month average of your blood sugar. They saw
it's not actually the average, it's a guesstimation.
Significant reduction in fasting glucose. They saw lower blood sugar levels, lower cholesterol levels, lower LDL levels, and
that doesn't matter. In fact, the cholesterol and LDL could go up. And so that's another thing about citing studies is that everyone's different. You may do carnivore and your LDL goes up, your cholesterol goes up, but so what? That means nothing. So if you watch his video and you're hearing that, oh, all these things went down on the carnivore diet, and now you try the carnivore diet and your LDL and cholesterol goes up, you're able to think, oh, well, this must not be for me because my cholesterol is going up. There must be something wrong with me, so I can't do this. So this is kind of misleading. And I'm not going to say, by the way, I'm not saying any of this he's doing intentional. He could be a really cool dude. He can really be sincere and actually think this stuff. But it's misleading when you kind of set a precedence, like your numbers have to be in this little certain range. And no, it's all going about presentation. Are you symptomatic? What issues are you having? And you address those on a symptom by symptom basis.
We saw significant weight reduction, right? Everything that everybody wants, they got from the carnivore diet. So it's no surprise as to why folks are jumping on this carnivore diet, because it does move the needle significantly. To make this even more amazing, the folks that were diabetic in this study, over 267 of them were diabetic, and of the diabetics, 84% of them were able to get off their oral medication, and the ones that were type 2 diabetics, 92% of them were able to stop their insulin injections.
Yeah, that's what happened with me with keto. With keto, I was able to reverse my prediabetes. That was amazing. But unfortunately, since then, I was eating too much salad. I don't know if I even mentioned this. This is my third time recording this because I was having technical issues. So I don't know if I already mentioned about the keto diet, but it did help with my prediabetes, and Carnivore is doing an even better job now.
Which was amazing, right? So as a diet, and call it a medicinal diet, there's
Nah, it's not a medicinal. I don't know what he means by medicinal. It's just the way we're supposed to eat. Plants are actually the ones that are used for medicinal purposes in certain doses. So not really sure what he means by medicinal. I think he's really implying that you should do this temporarily. Yeah, it has all these great things. If it can reverse diabetes, but in the long term, maybe not. And so what you end up doing is going back to the way you were eating before, or maybe he's proposing you eat plants and gravel and nuts or whatever, and it's doesn't make any sense.
no shortage of benefits, and something that we should all be thinking of. You know, in Ayurvedic medicine, they always looked at red meat as a medicine. They looked at those foods as medicines because the proteins in animal foods, like red meat, are extremely acidic.
Yeah, no, that means nothing. And I would guess that Ayurvedic medicine, because it's in India, I'm pretty sure they rationed their meat because of Hinduism. They don't eat cows. And I'm curious as to what kind of meat they would even eat, like maybe chicken or something. I'm not sure, but I don't think they were eating beef. And I don't even understand how that even would make sense, that they would primarily eat plants and then sometimes eat beef. Maybe they knew they needed certain nutrients from that beef. I think that's the medicinal aspect of it, because there are a ton of nutrients, essential nutrients, that's only in beef. You can't get it in plants. And so maybe they rationed their cows for that purpose. Excuse me. Yeah, we can't take that as like some scientific stuff, facts or anything like that. This was, I think, purely cultural. So, yeah.
Acid albumins.
And acid, that's completely meaningless.
As opposed to vegetarian-based proteins like nuts are more on the alkaline side. And you know that
I don't even know why that even matters. I'm hoping he doesn't think that affects pH in the blood. But we'll see why that's important.
that alkaline foods are going to cleanse you and clean you and detoxify.
Oh, and now he's saying, well, we know. No, we don't know. That's an opinion. We know that nuts and plants and all these things don't, they may cleanse you in the sense of you think you're being cleaned out because it goes right through you. It's not digested. But just because you think you're clearing out stuff just because you're passing it through your colon doesn't mean we know it's doing all kinds of wreaking havoc on your intestines. We know it causes inflammation. We know the oxalates and the leptins and the phthalic acid and all this kind of stuff. So we know this. This is hard science. We know the biochemical reactions and things that happen in our body when we eat plants. So he's, again, he's pushing these so-called studies, and we can't go by that.
You. But if you're insufficient in the proteins that you've been getting, then the more acidic the protein, the more penetrating it's going to be. And
we're not lacking in protein on a carnivore diet.
Deliver that protein in a more beneficial way. And also, you're going to, by reducing your carbohydrates or significantly avoiding them, you're going to kind of shift the microbiome to a stable of bugs called actinobacteria that are really good at delivering fat and fiber as the fuel supply, as opposed to
fiber as a fuel supply. I'm not sure. When he says you're reducing carbohydrates, you using fat and fiber.
Delivering sugar as the fuel supply, which predominate in our gut naturally in the fall. We're going to see bugs like bacteroidetes, which are really good at getting sugar out of the bloodstream. Obviously, this is when the fruits and the grains and all of the starches are naturally harvested in the fall. But in the springtime, the actinobacteria, which are good at delivering fat and fiber as fuel, are predominant in your gut, according to the Stanford studies that were done on the hunter-gatherer tribe.
Yeah, Stanford studies even worse than same as Harvard studies. Now, I'm not going to go back on this, but I'm pretty sure he was saying if you're cutting down on carbs, you eating meat, you get this bacteria that uses fat and fiber for fuel. I'm not sure what he's talking about. I don't know if he's confusing gluconeogenesis, you know, how our body naturally produces glucose when it's needed. Yeah, I'm not really sure where he went with that.
So the bugs in the soil change dramatically from season to season. We should change dramatically from season to season, which is why I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet, which is why we put out a free 3-season diet eating guide.
Nah, man, it's a carnivore season, 365, 24/7. There's no different. Now, back then, yeah, it was seasonal. You would harvest things in the fall to, like, especially fruit, because you're eating meat and fruit to help you fatten up for the winter. But we don't need to do that now. And if a person decides to do that, that's all good. I mean, I'm not telling you what to eat, but if you're going to do it seasonally. But back then, it wasn't the food we're eating now. Over 10,000 years ago, that's not what they were. The fruit and vegetables today are not from back then, or even a lot of them even from a couple of 100 years ago. So, I don't know. He's selling books on it, so that's that.
Where people can actually get recipes and grocery lists every month of the year. It's really important. So again, back to the hard to answer question.
Really important as an opinion.
Is the carnivore diet something that we should stay with long term? Well, let's dive into that. First of all, when they actually did studies on the Inuits,
again with the study, it's not a study, it's observational, and they have completely different genes. This is not at all applicable to people outside of that tribe.
They found that they had evolved to have a genetic adaptation to not let them build up ketones or eat a ketogenic diet for any length of time. So in other words, when the Westerners went up there and ate the ketogenic diet, the high protein, high fat diet, that was blubber and fish and all that meat and animal protein all day long with no vegetables, they built up ketones in their body, which for a short term can create a lot of benefit, but in the long term can actually have some detriment.
Okay, so this is called actually there's a couple of ways you adapt during carnivore. So one is your mitochondria adapting to using fat for fuel, and then there's also an actual ketone adaptation phase. That can take a while. That can take over a year to where your body regulates ketones more. I mean, your body is completely changing its fuel source, so it could take longer to have the same benefits or the same effect like the Inuits had. And so they come in and out of ketosis. If they eat a lot of meat, then they're kicking in gluconeogenesis to help. And the body does this naturally to help stimulate some insulin to retain electrolytes and things like that. Because you don't want to be in ketosis 24/7 every day. That was another mistake I made in keto. It was like this horrible thing that knocks you out of ketosis. Well, yeah, you should be knocked out of ketosis on a daily basis. Long-term ketosis can have major issues, heart palpitations, dizziness, all kinds of things. Of course, that also happens if you transition too quickly. Your mitochondria is trying to adapt, and during that time, you could feel dizzy, you could feel off, and it passes, usually within a couple of weeks. But yeah, he's kind of on there, kind of on track, but it's still not really clear. He's not saying the way that it actually is, which is it takes a while for your body to adapt to ketones. And so if those explorers had continued after, then it may be a different story. But it's true. Long-term ketosis is not good.
So, but the Inuits didn't build up those ketones. So for them, they were adapted to that carnivore-esque diet, not having a lot of carbohydrates or vegetables. But the Western folks didn't have that genetic adaptation. So,
and he's saying genetic adaptation as if they would never get it. They would eventually get it. And so it's not a hardcore thing. It's more based on the duration. And because they've been doing that forever, of course they're adapted. That's all their babies eat. That's what everybody eats. So, these explorers, and that's why I said I'm curious to see if they continued it and how it went.
That's sort of really interesting. And then you also have to recognize that, we're talking about eating an average carnivore breakfast would be eggs and bacon. Lunch would be like a hamburger patty with some cheese. A snack would be sardines, and dinner would be steak.
Now, this is his menu. There is no carnivore meal plan. Everyone's different. I don't just eat eggs and bacon. I eat beef bacon, but I don't always eat eggs and bacon. And beef patties, yeah, because it's more affordable. I don't really use cheese. Hardly ever, probably I don't ever eat sardines, really, very rare. But he's just giving his opinion on what he thinks people are eating.
That's it. Now, there are now modifications of the carnivore diet coming.
See, there's no the carnivore diet. No, there's no patent on what the carnivore diet is. There's a carnivore diet. There's many, 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 many ways of doing this. So he's kind of structuring it like this is just the way it is, and he's giving his opinion.
Allowing you to eat some non or low carbohydrate vegetables like zucchini and spinach and greens, or berries, or other.
That's keto.
Things
technically anything 80 to 85% of beef. If 80 to 85% of your diet consists of beef, that's technically carnivore. So again, like I said, there's so many different variations of the diet that you can't just say the carnivore diet.
Some nuts and seeds and things like that.
Don't eat nuts and seeds.
But
most people get very bloated on nuts and seeds.
The backdrop, the elephant in the room, are all the studies that we've heard for years.
Those studies are meaningless.
That have told us that eating meat will increase your risk of certain cancers.
That's, zero evidence for that. Even the studies that purport that, there's no evidence for it.
There's a study done in 2021 with over 180,000 folks. And they found that the ones who ate the most meat had a 20% increased risk of cardiovascular disease.
So what these studies don't show are the multitude of confounding variables in these studies. That, you give someone meat as if they're locked in a room under 24/7 surveillance, and they're given a very strict diet. And then you have the other control group or the other group that's also under lock and key, under 24 surveillance. They have the exact same sleep patterns, the exact same genes, the exact same lifestyle. And the only difference between the two identical groups is that one's eating meat. Then you could kind of have more inference to say that, it's kind of accurate, or it's can show some cause and effect, but you'll never have that. So just because you take people who are eating the meat and now they're shown to have a 20% increase. And by the way, these aren't done super long term. And so what they do, what these epidemiological studies do, is they take these surveys of people who don't know what they've been eating for a year or two, or however long the study was for. A lot of them lie. A lot of them, they eat meat, but they might smoke. They might be older. And a lot of times in these studies, they are older because these researchers are being paid for their research, and they don't get their papers published when they fail. And most of them fail, then pass. And you don't see the numbers of times they fail. So we'll keep going.
53% increased risk of heart disease, 101% increased risk of dying of a stroke for those who ate the most meat compared to those who ate the least amount of meat. And that was...
Yeah, because a lot of times when they do these studies, the people, they cherry pick who they want. And it's kind of like a jury, and the lawyers cherry pick their jury members. In these studies, they give people meat and there's people don't have meat. Well, there's like thousands of confounding variables, like I said, that make them all different. So it's completely meaningless. And then they take the data they have, and then they create a model that projects to say this is what would happen if it was actually fully controlled and observed. It's completely made up, these studies. And so if you want more information on that, you can join at Carnivore Labs. There's a link below where there's a cheat sheet, and within the class, it's totally free, where you can actually see what I'm talking about. I don't want to take up too much time in the video. If you're watching these React videos, I don't want to go into too much depth. I like to watch the video, but if you want more info on that and why these studies are meaningless, check it out.
Also meat and processed meat. So there is the kind of the differentiation factor. And that is whether it's just those processed meats that are bad, or what if you ate grass-fed meat. There are studies show that grass-fed meat is completely different than grain-fed meat, and that grass-fed meat may not have that cancer risk.
That's total nonsense.
Associated with it. Studies do show that people ate more red meat has significantly more risk of colon cancer and breast cancer. Those studies are there.
These are not studies. These are surveys. And they're not observed. There's no control. It's just such a joke. It's such pseudoscience. It's theology, it's ideology. And that's why I say it's a religion. You have to blindly believe in these studies, these people who do these studies. And there's no one even who, like, science is based on, here's my hypothesis, come prove it wrong. That's not done anymore. They, like I said, Harvard and Stanford, they pump out these so-called studies every single day, and no one's challenging them because they're just too expensive. It costs millions of dollars to go and do these surveys and get this respondent data and, fudge the numbers and all that, or adjusted. They call it adjusting the numbers, the data, but it's just basically, like I said, they're saying, oh, what if it was controlled and observed? This is what it would be, but it's completely worthless. You have to just try it for yourself. That's it.
And also just the fact that the lack of vegetables have actually been studied to actually increase the risk of certain types of cancers as well as heart disease. So we can't sort of forget those studies and just say, well, they're automatically not right.
Yeah, we can. I mean, it's no different. It's no different than him pushing a certain religion and saying, well, we can't just write off these scripture or write off these scrolls or tablets or whatever. Of course we can. This is not evidence. And it's not based on science. This is the most important thing. The big takeaway is that these studies on human nutrition is not based on science. They're based on surveys and make-believe. I know it's hard to hear that. I know it's like another reason why I say it's like a religion. It's like you're following a religion your whole life up to this point, and now someone's coming with some contradicting evidence against it. It's not easy to accept it. This is the way you've been raised. It's new information. There's cognitive dissonance. There's, it's emotional. People get just as emotional about what they eat as they do with their religion. In fact, it's like you're trying to convert people sometimes when you're trying to get them to start a carnivore diet. It's because you're trying to, they're unlearning all the misinformation they've had growing up. So, but he's on the side of thinking this stuff actually matters. And so that's the position he's coming from.
So my suggestion is that this carnivore diet is a diet that is a kind of no carb, get your body to burn the fat as fuel and stop this incessant, overzealous ability that we have as kind of modern Western humans to deliver sugar out of the gut into the blood and overwhelm the bloodstream and the body with sugar, creating prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, way more prevalent, obesity, cholesterol levels, all that comes as a result of that.
Cholesterol levels don't matter.
So as a reset, it does make sense. Maybe for a month or so.
This is the misinformation. Because people have such great outcomes, period, forever, for as long as they do it, he's really banking on and pushing that, yeah, you feel good now, but you don't know about the future. So, yeah, it's great for now because, of course, he can't refute that. You can't refute millions of people saying that how it's changed their life and completely changed their health, their mental health, physical health, all that. So he's not going to go there. It's kind of like, and not trying to be disrespectful to him. I'm not, this just reminds me of Shaitan, of like the devil, and how he gets us, he baby steps us to hellfire, and how he doesn't really want to get you to leave your faith. He just wants you to just practice less of it, just do these little things. Like, he comes at you very fair seeming. And I'm, again, Dr. John, not calling you the devil, but I'm just saying it reminds me of that, where he's like, yeah, this is true, because he knows he's not going to say, no, the carnivore diet is making people sick and they feel terrible. He's not going to go there. But he's going to say, yeah, it's good, but just for now. Don't do it forever. Go back to the stuff that was. And then again, we do have some agreement with, people who are plant-based, in us carnivore, is we all agree that these highly processed foods are the worst, right? So this is another way to gain truth, is to have some type of grounding, some kind of common ground. And so he's doing that by saying, yeah, it works great in the beginning, but down the road, it's going to kill you, give you cancer and heart attacks and all kinds of bad stuff.
Could do that diet, grass-fed, and do all that.
And it doesn't have to be grass-fed.
And have it make sense. If you're going to do something like that, do it in the springtime, because that's when nature would naturally put you into a natural state of ketogenesis. In the fall, we're harvesting, seeds and grains and nuts. And
no, we don't do that anymore. The agricultural revolution 10, 12,000 years ago was done out of necessity. The megafauna and all these meats and things that were dying out or being overhunted. We even started eating the predators. They found a way to hybridize and breed vegetables, mostly a lot of the mustard plant, to make it less toxic. That was the whole point. 99% of plants today can't be eaten. It's toxic, like overly toxic. So what they've done and what they're still doing, they're trying to make it less and less toxic. And in the fruit, they just add more and more sugar. Like quite a few fruit, I think mango is one of them. It's mostly sucrose. It's table sugar. They've added so much sugar to fruit over the last few hundred years. It's not natural. So people say eat real food. The only real food are animal-based foods. The fruit and vegetables is not real food. It's man-made. It's been adulterated. So, yeah, let's continue.
Fruits, all high-starch foods, which the bugs in the gut are supposed to be bacteria.
He's really into the bugs in the gut. Your body makes the bacteria it needs for what you're eating. The body is highly intelligent. Like if you're not eating vegetables, you're not going to have this certain bacteria. It makes what it needs to break down what you're eating. So for example, like fiber, the small fermentation that it does feeds a certain gut bacteria that's beneficial to the colon. Well, the meat does the same thing, only does it from the other side using ketones, the other side meaning in the bloodstream, because that butyrate that the bacteria uses, it ends up being ketones. So just skip the fiber with all the damage it does to your gut, and you can get the same benefit from meat. And not only does it feed that bacteria, but it feeds all the bacteria that have benefit in the colon, all the way up and down the colon, not just in one particular region of the colon. So yeah, that's kind of misleading what he's saying.
To deliver that sugar as a fuel supply, store reserve fuel, add
the reserve fuel being fat.
A little extra fat for insulation for the winter coming.
We don't need to do that. Like I said, plants were hybridized and bred as for emergencies because of that time back then, 10,000 years ago, not now.
In the springtime, it's an austere harvest. If you look out your window in the spring, there's no grains to be harvested. There's no pasta or pizza to be harvested. It's a low carbohydrate or no carbohydrate time of the year. Traditional fasts were done, and most of religions do their fasting in the spring. So it's a calorie restricted, low carb time.
No such thing as calories. You can't eat calories. And many cultures, fasting periods move throughout the year, like as in Islam, Ramadan moves throughout the year slowly.
A time of the year where if you just get rid of the carbs, that would be the ideal thing that we should all be thinking about every single spring, because that.
So his thing is he's kind of playing all fields. He's like, yeah, that's good, this good, that good. It's just certain times of the year, and that can seem appealing to someone who doesn't really understand the carnivore diet. It's like, oh yeah, he does agree with it, but it has to be at certain times. That's what I should be doing. No.
That's what nature's plan
Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with fasting, but I'm just saying you don't want to be eating plants and seeds anytime.
was. Now, if you want to do that by eating just meat and no carbs, that would be an option. You could do it in a vegetarian way. You could do it in a vegan way. It doesn't really matter.
Of course it matters. That makes no sense. What's the point of the whole video? If none of this matters,
But if you're living off the land, as all of our ancestors did, they didn't have carbohydrates in the spring. And I think that's the big thing.
Many cultures had no carbohydrates ever. They had these tubers. It's nothing like today. That's the whole point. If you're going to be like your ancestors, go hard in the paint and just eat those tubers. Get rid of everything in your grocery store and go eat some roots, maybe some grass. Like we really got some Texas sharpshooters up in here. I can say that I'm in Texas now, so I like using that logical fallacy. But we cherry pick a lot of this stuff. When we say be like our ancestors, well, dude, you're picking and choosing. You're not riding a horse. You're not filming your video with a potato. So we got to keep it real, man. Like being like the ancestors, then eat like they did. And they didn't eat any of the stuff we had in the grocery store.
That's happening with a carnivore diet is you're giving your body a full-on break from the carbohydrates, which we've overdone and created a stable of bugs in your gut that are really good at delivering sugar out of your blood into your gut into your blood and creating a predisposition to weight gain, metabolic syndrome, and of course, blood sugar related.
Weight gain is mostly from combining fats and sugar. That's what, like he alluded to for the fall, you fatten up with fruit. And I think he said with meat, and that is the best way to gain weight. That's how I gained weight, eating fat and sugar together. Now, when I say weight, I'm talking about like gain fat. But a person can lose weight, body fat, with a high carb diet, high carb, low fat, or high fat, low carb. And of course, carnivore is high fat, no carb, or severely, technically there's carbs in beef even, but like really low. But the question is, which one's healthy? We get so obsessed with how people look, like low body fat, muscles, and all that. We think that means they're healthy. That's not the case. That sometimes can be the case, but it's not always the case. So, yeah, I don't know. He's really into the seasonal thing. So, which is, I get it. That's his business. So, I think has a spa or something like that.
Issues. So there you have it. I wrote a pretty comprehensive article with all the science on the good, the bad, the ugly.
It's not science. Not science. These are surveys. Epidemiology is not science. They're really throwing this word around. That's why I do these videos. That's why the carnivores and other people do these videos. I'm just trying to be one more person to pass on this information.
Ugly. There's definitely good. There's definitely some risks you have to be concerned about.
There's no risk. The only risk is just some not feeling great if you transition too quickly. That's about it. And if you're on medication, you definitely need to work with your doctor. Some medications, especially if you're on any kind of insulin medication, you don't want to just overnight go carnivore because you're going to drive your blood sugar through the floor because you're taking insulin and no longer eating sugar.
I think it's all about giving your body a low carb break in a seasonal way. And that is basically called seasonal eating, something all of us did, right? If you're a hunter gatherer and you have a harvest in the fall, that's
not our lifestyle anymore. Now, if somebody lives like that on the land, no problem. Go for it.
Abundant. You can't eat the food out of your garden fast enough. Are you going to go hunting and kind of over hunt your environment so come winter there's nothing for you to hunt when you desperately need those foods if you're a hunter-gatherer? No. You're going to have a higher amount of fruits and vegetables and grains and tubers and starch in the fall, and you're going to have a significant higher amount of protein and fat in the winter and into the spring. That's
what he's saying. High amount of fat mixing with those carbs is going to fatten you up for winter. We don't need to do this. Like I said, this was done 10,000, 12,000 years ago out of necessity because we were over hunting the meat at that time. But now we have enough meat, at least for now. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully we don't lose that, but this is not relevant for today.
how all of our ancestors did it. And if we can mimic that and get back into our natural rhythm of eating the right food in the right season when our gut bugs are supposed to be inoculated with a different stable of bugs to deliver different fuel from season.
I don't know what he's talking about. Like, you need different types of fuel. There's only two types of, like, really two types of fuel. There's fat and there's sugar. Sometimes protein, if not a necessity, like if you're in starvation mode. But fat and sugar, that's it. You don't need the sugar. Your body makes it on its own out of fat or protein. So, yeah, that's misleading.
This season. You can learn more about this at lifespod.com. I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet. We have a 3-Season Diet Eating Guide, which is free. You can get it at lifespod.com. And again, check out our newsletter where I put articles with all the scientific references proving ancient modern wisdom with ancient modern wisdom, medical wisdom, Ayurvedic wisdom with modern science. All right, guys, thanks for listening. I'll see
Yeah, it's off to him for not editing that out. I have a hard time doing that.
you next time. Do you like this video?
I don't know, man. I think his heart's in the right place. He looks great for his age. I mean, I looked him up. I think he's, at this time of this video, he's like 68. So he looks good, man. More power to him. But a lot of that is genetics. A lot of, you know what I mean? I'm saying, like, maybe this works for him. I don't know. But we're in a crisis right now. Type 2 diabetes, cancer, heart disease, all this type of dementia, Alzheimer's. We don't have time for this. You need to go hard in the paint. Like I said before, you need to do carnivore. You need to transition properly. Join Carnivore Labs below for men. Yeah, go join that. Learn how to properly transition to carnivore. I'm going to keep doing videos on how to do that and all this type of stuff. And if you're new to this channel, I know you don't know me. There's no reason for you to believe what I'm saying, but hopefully over time, you'll see, maybe you'll hear from other people who talk better than I do better videos, and you'll see that what I'm saying is true. So, hey, hope this was helpful, beneficial. Again, the link below, join Carnivore Labs for free, and I hope to see you there. And until next time, peace, and thank you for being curious. Take care. Later.